Hey everyone, just wanted to give you a quick heads up. The second Global Product Owner Summit is coming soon. You can get all the details at bit.ly/Product Owner 2024. That's bit.ly/Product Owner 2024. And it's all lowercase, all one word. Oh, and stick with us until the end of the episode to know the dates and the tracks that we have for you in this year's summit. But for now, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a very, very special bonus episode. I want to say very twice because I have one of my product idols and also publishing idols as a guest today. That's Guy Kawasaki. Hi, Guy. Welcome to the show.
Hi. Thank you very much. You're very kind.
You don't know the half of it. I won't bother you with all of the details, but I heard about Guy's work first when I was in university. That's 1998. Wow, that's a long time ago. That's when I worked with my first Apple product, which was, by the way, a laser printer. Apple was all the rage.
You had to have it up to something.
Yeah, absolutely. But I was more of a Unix and Sun systems fanboy at the time. But Guy's work influenced me again in the 2010s. I read Ape, author, publisher, entrepreneur, and that led me to create two publishing labels and to publish, I think, 6 books by now, and one of them a bestseller on Amazon.
Wow, congratulations.
And thank you, of course, for the inspiration you gave us, those of us who read your work early on. And the topic of today's conversation is a remarkable topic. We're going to dive more into that because Guy's got a book out. The book is named or titled Think Remarkable. And in this book, Guy explores, I think, 9 rules, if I remember correctly.
Yes.
For a remarkable life. He interviews many remarkable people on his podcast. But I would like to learn a little bit more about you, Guy. I mean, your work has been inspiring to me, also fascinating and quite diverse. So share with us a pivotal moment early in your career that set you on what is now your own individual remarkable path.
As Steve Jobs says, you can only connect the dots looking backwards. So there have been some pivotal dots in my life. Not that I knew that at the time. So the first pivotal dot happened in about the 6th grade. I come from a lower class family in Honolulu, Hawaii. And I was in the public school system. And a 6th grade teacher told my parents to take me out of the public school system, put me into a college prep system because I had too much intelligence. And lucky for me, they listened to her. They made the sacrifices so that I could go to this prep school that got me into Stanford. And then, the rest kind of is history. Not that it was that smooth, but it was definitely, I got on the right track. So you could say that, one of the real decisive points of my career was when a 6th grade teacher convinced my parents to put me in a different school. So if any of you are educators out there, you should understand that, a discussion like that, if you're a teacher or a coach or, a mentor, something as simple as that can change the arc of someone's life.
Yeah. One thing I would like to say that this happened to me also later in life where someone said something that changed my own perspective on what I could do and what I would eventually end up doing. This can also happen to all of us working with other people out there. If you recognize a key skill, something special about someone, it's really important to say it out loud and encourage them to take action if that's what they want to do. And how about the first book? Like what drove you, what gave you the impulse to write your first book, Guy?
I wish I could tell you there's this like massive positive feeling, but the truth is that I was CEO of a small software company, and I was kind of miserable in the position. And so I wanted to write a book about how companies should be run, how to do the right thing the right way. Because in this position, I wasn't quite able to do that. So in a sense, when I wrote the Macintosh Way about the Macintosh division, it was a rather cathartic writing. So, uh, you know, it wasn't the most glorious start or motivation, but it became the first of 16 books.
Yeah, absolutely. Quite a few books indeed. I have read and noted down and dog-eared as much as I could ape. Author, publisher, entrepreneur, which was a very inspiring book for me. And one of the superpowers you have is exactly that: coming up with ideas and transforming them into something that is easy to grasp and, of course, inspires many people. You talked about evangelism quite early on. And many of our listeners are actually true believers in transforming the world of work. In fact, that's what we talk about a lot here on the podcast. What have you learned about evangelism, the act of conveying ideas, of helping people do their own transformation, that
Well,
you could share with
evangelism
us?
comes from a Greek word meaning bringing the good news. So, first there was this guy named Jesus Christ, and he brought the good news of eternal life. And then there was about a 2,000-year gap, and we got to the Macintosh division with more or less business evangelism. And the business evangelism, the secular evangelism that we did, was we brought the good news of Macintosh that would make people more creative and productive. And so we weren't out trying to sell a computer as much as evangelize a way of thinking that, you should be able to use a computer as a tool. You shouldn't need special training. It should be easy. And not only easy, it should actually be delightful. And so that was the good news that we brought with Macintosh. And now I'm chief evangelist of Canva. And Canva is an online graphics design service. And the good news of Canva is that it enables basically everybody to be a better communicator by empowering them to create beautiful graphics. So that's what an evangelist does. He or she brings good news.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really like that approach of thinking about what is it in it for the people using the product, rather than, here's a product, buy. What are some things that you've learned about first creating that vision, because that's a difficult job we need to do, product designers need to do, and then also communicating that vision?
Sure. Well, you could just go to work for Steve Jobs. That would be the easiest way. Of course, he's not with us anymore, so it gets a little harder now. I think that there's several, tried and true methods. One is to work backwards from the customer. So rather than working forward from what you want to do, you have to work backward from the customer to see what they want. So I'll give you a negative example. Kodak was very good at chemicals on paper, chemicals on film. But if you work back from the customer, you would realize that the customer is not really in the business of purchasing chemicals. The customer wants to preserve special memories. So if you work backwards, you say, wow, our customers want to preserve memories. They're using our chemicals right now. But believe it or not, in 1975, an engineer in Kodak invented digital photography. And Kodak, to put it mildly, never embraced digital photography on time. Now, to be fair, that was like a 10 or 15 pound prototype, 100 pixels. It wasn't exactly workable back then. But obviously, somebody made digital photography work, because that's all we do now. So they could have done it. And I think it's a lesson that Kodak was working forward from what they were good at, chemicals, and what they loved to do, chemicals, and what they were making money doing, chemicals, instead of working backwards and realizing our customers want to preserve memories. Right now, they're doing it with chemicals, but imagine the advantage of doing it with sensors. And they would be maybe Sony today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's quite a transformational example in industry. Now, talking about working backwards from customers, of course, you have a book out, Think Remarkable, and I'm pretty sure you were thinking about the reader as well when you were writing that book. So tell us a little bit more. What do you want to cause? What are the good news you bring with Think Remarkable?
Yes. So Think Remarkable is my latest book. Comes out on March 6th, 2024. And I have had this podcast for 4 years now called Remarkable People. And I truly have had remarkable people from Jane Goodall, Stacey Abrams, Margaret Atwood, Stephen Wolfram, Angela Duckworth, Katie Milkman, Bob Cialdini, David Ocker. I could go on, 200 times. And I learned a lot from them. And I thought, it'd be great if people could learn from them like I learned from them. And one way, of course, is listen to 200 episodes, which would take you roughly 200 hours. It will not take you 200 hours to read this book. So what I did with the work of my co-author, Madison Neismer, is we distilled the lessons. And so this is a book. It's not a collection of interviews. The chapters are not, this is the Jane Goodall chapter. This is the Steve Wozniak chapter. The chapters are organized by subject, by task. The book has 3 pieces. It is growth, based on Carol Dweck's work with the growth mindset. It's grit, based on Angela Duckworth's work with grit. And grace, which is, I guess, more or less my convention. And within those 9 chapters I counted 88 lessons, 88 techniques. I'm not saying you got to do all 88, but I'm telling you, this is 88 ways to achieve those 3 stages. And so it is, in a sense, it's like Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. It's like the 4 agreements. It's, 1 Minute Manager. It's like that kind of book that it's short. It's very easy. It's extremely tactical. And it's meant so that you can make a difference and become remarkable.
So one example of that I really loved. First of all, the podcast is by people who are doing the things they talk about, which is firsthand experience is so powerful when people tell their own personal story. And I remember you interviewing Julia Cameron for the 4th time. I think you said
Yes.
that she was the only one that had been on the show for 4 times. And she was giving very specific ideas and talking about ideas that took her decades to develop, right? And she's sharing them in one podcast episode.
Right. And that's the nature of the podcast and the book. And, to do a podcast like the one I do, which is really practical and tactical, and I work backwards from the customer. So my customer is the listener, not the guest, right? And so I have to work back from the listener. Like, what does a listener want to gain from Julia Cameron, as opposed to what would Julia Cameron like to tell the customer? Now, it happens that in Julia's case, probably the 2 things are the same, but many times guests, all they want to do is sell more books, right? So I guess you could make that case of me on your podcast anyway. But it's like Julia Cameron's goal is to make people more creative. She's the mother of creativity. And people listening to Julia Cameron or reading Julia Cameron or listening to my podcast of Julia Cameron, what they're interested in is, how do I become more creative? And that's what we feel both in the book and the podcast.
And talking about thinking back from the customer, many of our listeners are, of course, in leadership positions, sometimes lateral leadership, sometimes hierarchical leadership. How did your experiences at Apple, and of course also what you've learned from the people that you've interviewed for the podcast and writing the book, what did you learn from those experiences that shape your current views on leadership?
My current views on leadership are, they're primarily, there's 3 sources. One is I work for Steve Jobs, which is a life-altering experience. The second is I started several software companies. And the third is I interviewed people who are, really great leaders like Tom Peters or Stanley McChrystal. So I have both external and internal lessons. And this is an important point because, to do a podcast and to do a book like this, okay, granted, it's very hard to get Steve Wozniak or Stacey Abrams or Jane or Stanley McChrystal to come on your podcast. That's hard enough. But then it's more hard to figure out, what do you ask them? And when they answer, you need to be able to come back and like pivot and shuck and jive off their answer to get the next level answer. And to do that, I don't want to be ageist or something, but it's unlikely that if you're 20 years old and you've never experienced a layoff, you've never worked for a Steve Jobs, you've never succeeded and failed, hard to imagine that if you're 20 years old, you could ask the questions. You know, you have got to have scars to ask these questions. So I'm trying to, because I have lots of scars, I've asked the questions that the 20-year-old needs to hear the answer to, who at this point in their life may not have been able to come up with the question. And I'm not saying that it's their fault. It's just that they don't have enough data yet. If anything, I have too much data. So I ask the question so that you don't have to ask the question or figure it out over the next, 50 years of your life.
And experience transforms our perspective in life. I mean, sometimes very dramatic and dark experiences, other time more joyful experiences. And those experiences are, of course, part of our personal growth, which is a topic you explore, as you just said a moment ago, this growth mindset, the ability to accept that we are constantly growing, that we are not who we are today a few days from now.
Yeah. Let's hope we're constantly growing. There are people, and I discussed this, who have a fixed mindset and they don't grow. They believe that what they can do is what they can do. They cannot do it better, and they cannot do different things. And there's also people, so that's the case you usually think of, right? That someone doesn't believe in himself or herself and cannot grow. But there are also people, gifted people, who are so good at something that they don't want to risk their image and self-image and take a chance and learn something else. So you take an extreme example. Let's suppose that you're a child prodigy and you're just so great on cello or violin, right? You just, you get into Juilliard at 12 years old, right? And you're playing concerts and you're at Carnegie Hall, et cetera, et cetera. So everybody thinks, my God, you're a prodigy, you're a genius, you're amazing. Well, if you keep listening to that, you might not want to take an extreme example, surfing, because you're not athletic, because you don't get outdoors, because all you ever do is practice your violin. And so if you have a fixed mindset, you say to yourself, I'm a great violinist. People love my violin playing. People recognize me. I'm going to suck at surfing. I don't want people to think that I'm not good at everything. So I'm not going to take up surfing. And I know I'm going to fail at surfing because, or at least initially. So if I do that, it will affect my own brain. I will stop believing I'm a prodigy, because it's unlikely you're going to be a prodigy in playing the violin and in surfing. And so you don't want to risk your image and self-image. And that is as much of a problem for fixed mindset as the feeling that, oh my God, I cannot do anything.
And one of the things that when I talk to people at work, one of the things that I try to convey is exactly this, that if we really want to be good at something we're not good at yet, first we need to be okay with sucking at it. Like nobody goes from, nothing to a prodigy, as you said. And it's not easy either to write a book. And I know, because I've written my book and I've helped others write books, how hard it is. Of course, you interviewed more than 200 people by now in preparation for the book. But how did you approach this writing project?
Listen, I've written 16 books. This I know how to do. So my methodology is I spend months, literally months, making the outline. And this is why I use Word, because Word is very good at outlining, and Word is very good with style sheets. So we're going to geek out on Word for a little bit. So I make the outline with Word. Each level of the outline has specific formatting. So I can flip between the outline view and the print view. and see how the book would lay out. I need to see what the book looks like in order to write it. So if you were to look at my Word manuscript in print mode, you would see what looks like a pretty finished kind of interior book design. And I just need that to write because, I look at many people's books. I get many, many drafts, right? And listen, when you write a novel, it's okay to write 20, 30-page chapters with no headings. But when you write a nonfiction book, I think that you need a heading or a subheading every page or two. And you need bullets and you need call outs. I mean, you cannot, if you wrote a book on how to embrace the growth mindset and that, let's say that chapter was 10 pages. And if you had no subheads or heads, you would completely lose your audience. People need little anchors along the way. And so that you can only, when you use outlining and you use the print view of the outline, you can see, oh my God, I've gone 3 pages without a subhead. I'm going to lose my audience. I got to break this up.
It's so hard to convince authors to do that. I just had a couple of books where a lot of my work was trying to convey the idea that we need some kind of accomplishment as a reader, right? Like we can't go 15 pages without a heading or some kind of break in the flow.
I think that, like, I have paragraphs that are 1 sentence long. I think the longest a paragraph should be is 3 sentences, maybe 4. But then there are people who write nonfiction books where a paragraph is half a page. And like, you really expect people to understand something? There's like no freaking way. There's no way that people, and I mean, if you think about it, if you look at the typical LinkedIn newsletter article or the typical Medium post or Substack, there's nothing like that. There's no like 2,000 word essay with no subheads.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, turning a little bit to work. Now, many of our listeners are really committed to the idea of transforming the world of work and making an impact.
Right.
And of course, you have a unique vantage point working at tech giants like Apple or Google, and now at startups like Canva. How do these experiences inform your views on making a difference at work?
Okay, this is a very important concept. So I have been blessed with luck. And it's lucky that I got to work at the Macintosh division. It's because of nepotism. My college classmate hired me. It's luck that I got to Canva, because the way I got to Canva was that the people at Canva noticed that I was using Canva to make tweets. And it actually wasn't me. It was someone working for me doing my social media. So when Canva reached out to me, they said, oh, we see you using Canva to make your tweets. Would you like to talk to us about possibly, working together? And when I got that tweet, first of all, I was lucky to notice the @mention, right? So I got the @mention. I went to the person working for me and I said, isn't Canva the thing we use? And she said, yes. And I said, do you like it? She goes, oh yeah, it's really great. I said, should I help them? She said, yes, you should help them. And if it wasn't for that, I would not have become the chief evangelist of Canva. Again, connecting the dots, right? I mean, if anything along that chain had gone wrong, like I did not notice the @mention because I was getting dozens of @mentions per day. If I had not noticed that @mention, if I had not asked her, if she had not said she liked it, if they were not coming to the United States a few weeks later, the arc of my life would have changed too. So that's another lesson in
So
connecting.
what I hear you say, I don't know if I got this right, but what I hear you say is this: we need to be open for the opportunities to also have an influence around us.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense, one of the things that I say is that based on my experience, you gotta say yes. You should just keep saying yes. Now, I know people who say, you gotta focus. If you keep saying yes, you're gonna be defocused and you're gonna be mediocre, and you're not gonna accomplish a lot because you're all over the map. I understand that, but I'm telling you, my personal experience is always say yes and figure it out after. Because there are times I said yes. There are times that, I didn't quite know what I was going to do after I said yes. But you figure it out. That's part of being remarkable. And listen, um, I evangelize the Macintosh operating system to developers. I am the least technical person in the world. I have never taken a computing class. And yet I had to convince people to write Macintosh programs, often using assembly language. So if I had said to myself, "Oh, Guy, you have this opportunity to work for the Macintosh division, but you don't have a PhD in computer science. You've never written a computer program. All you've done is using an Apple II to write word processing and spreadsheets and databases. You're not qualified for this position." Again, the arc of my life would have changed. Now, you started this question by saying, Guy, you've worked with Apple and Canva and Google and Wikipedia. You've had the opportunity to change and make a difference for many people. I need to address this. If you're listening to this podcast and you're thinking, "Oh, this book is for people like Steve Jobs or people who are going to create, billion-dollar companies. This book isn't for me." Well, this book is for you because, well, two things. One, you don't know. You may be the next Steve Jobs. When Steve Jobs was beginning to be Steve Jobs, he probably didn't know he was Steve Jobs. It was just Steve Jobs, right? That's number one. But number two, this book isn't only for Steve Jobs and Jane Goodall and Stacey Abrams and Steve Wozniak. This book is for anybody who wants to make a difference. Now, making a difference doesn't mean you need to sell 100 million computers. Making a difference can be, you could be a teacher, a coach, a mentor. You could be a parent. You're making a difference in the world. It may be to one person. It may be to a child. It may be to a friend. You don't need to be Nelson Mandela to be remarkable. And people need to understand that. We only hear about the Nelson Mandelas and the, Barack Obamas and the Jane Goodalls. But I'm telling you, lots of remarkable people do lots of remarkable things you never heard of. And all of that adds up. It's not like, oh, if we only had 10 remarkable people, we could change the world. You need an infinite number of remarkable people.
There's more than enough work out there to be done.
No kidding. Yeah.
But
if
tell me a little
saved
bit.
one kid, imagine that. If everybody saved one kid, if 150 million Americans saved one kid, so now 150 million Americans help 150 million American kids. That's 300 million. That's the whole country.
Indeed. And when it comes to this, I think you mentioned the word, and it is the title of the book, of course, remarkable. But how do you define remarkable? How do you define it, and how do you find it? Like, when did you know that you were going to be remarkable?
Well, okay, that's three different questions. I'll answer the last one first. Listen, I'm not going around thinking I'm so remarkable. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm not that humble a person, but have you ever witnessed people in action? It happens a lot at airports and airplanes where people have this attitude like, "Do you know who I am? How dare you not upgrade me to first class?" Right? I'm Global Services. I've been flying United my whole life. I have 2 million miles. How dare you? Give me a freaking break. Who gives a shit who you are? But anyway, I digress. Nobody can say they ever saw me pull that attitude. I don't think I ever have. I must have somewhere along the line, but I don't think I ever have. Okay, so that was your third question. I forgot the second and first.
How do you define and find remarkable?
Okay. How do you define remarkable? I define remarkable as someone who has made a difference, someone who's made the world a better place. And again, I'm telling you, it doesn't have to be Steve Jobs level remarkable. It can be one person, one place. You made one patch of road, beautiful and clean. like it takes infinite number of people doing infinite things to make the world a remarkable place. So don't get all hung up on, oh, Guy, this is only for Steve Jobs. For one thing, I don't want to sell only 10 copies of this book. Okay. I want to sell 10 million copies of this book. And wait, so that was how do you define remarkable?
And
What's
how
the
do you
second
find
question?
it? And how do you find it? Like, how
Oh,
do I know I'm on the path?
well, this is an important concept. And I may lose some buyers right now, but you should know this. So this is not a self-help book in the sense of there are many self-help books just like that promises you how to remake yourself into someone who's thinner, sexier, hotter, smarter, better, blah, blah, blah. Okay. This is not that kind of self-help book. And there will never be, Vasco, I promise you, there will never be a Guy Kawasaki Think Remarkable weekend retreat at the Ritz-Carlton for $5,000 where you, after 48 hours, you'll be a remarkable person. And if you sign up now, you'll get 10% off the $5,000 fee for early sign up. Because I've been to some of those things and you know what? It's like you go in this. Have you ever been to one of those things, Vasco? Okay, let me explain.
But I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah. You pay $5,000 to this guru, right? And this guru makes the first opening session and the guru stands up and gets a standing ovation just for walking in the room. And then the guru stands up and says, look to the person on your right and tell that person you're remarkable. Look to the person on the left and tell that person you're remarkable. And then look at me, look at me, look at me. You are remarkable. That's $5,000 right there. Everybody listening to this podcast, you owe me $5,000. I just did for you what's going to happen in that conference. So what I'm trying to say is that the way you be remarkable is not to think, how do I reposition myself as a thought leader, visionary, brand evangelist, whatever. The way you be remarkable is you make a difference. If you make a difference, people will think you are remarkable. So the sequence is do something good, you'll be remarkable. That's how simple it is. The book is about how to do something good with growth and grit and grace. It's not, this is how you put a lipstick. This is not how you put lipstick on a pig, because lipstick on a pig is just lipstick on a pig. You don't want to be a pig with lipstick. You want to do something that makes a difference, and then people will think that you're remarkable.
So the book is Think Remarkable, of course, and Guy also has the podcast Remarkable People, which you can listen to, and the link is in the show notes. But Guy, before we go, what's one exciting work that you've looked at recently and you would like to call attention to it?
You mean product, or what's
it could be product, can be somebody's mission, can be a personal mission or a business mission, something that maybe an interviewee from your podcast, okay, something that you've looked at and you said, this is inspiring.
Okay. So let me tell you, I think that these large language models, this AI, ChatGPT, Bard, Claude, and for writing Quillbot, I think they are a bigger deal than personal computers and social media, the steam engine, electricity, the industrial revolution. I think AI is bigger than all of them, maybe all of them combined. And I have to tell you that every day when I use those products, I say to myself, what did I do before? How did I do this before? I don't understand this. I'll give you a tactical example. So I have all my contacts in Google Contacts, but sometimes I need to print them out, to create a directory or something. And so you export them. So you export from Google Contacts and it becomes a Google CSV, comma separated value file, right? Now, if you ever looked at that file or open it up in a spreadsheet, your head will explode. your head will explode. There are so many fields. You would think in context, there would be first name, last name, address, city, state, zip, phone 1, phone 2, email 1, email 2. You'd think there'd be like 10 or 15 fields. I swear to God, there's like 100 fields. You open it up in Excel and it's like column A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, Z, and then it starts all over again. So I took this Google CSV file and I put it in ChatGPT and I said, remove all the blank fields. Display first name, last name, company, title, email, and phone. Put a 2-carriage returns between each record, each person, right? And number them. And like 60 seconds later, it's done this. And I look at that. And now if you think about it, how did it know what a blank field is? How does it know what first name, last name is? How did it know when this record ended? How did it know all this stuff? And honestly, Vasco, I don't know how it knows that, but somehow it did it, right? And
It is quite
many
amazing.
authors hide the fact that they use AI for their writing. I am proud to say I use it all the time. It helps me as a research assistant. It improves my writing. It tightens up my prose. It gives me perspectives and uses that I had never considered. And there's no doubt in my mind that LLMs have made me 2 or 3 times a better writer. And so you ask me, what am I excited about? I'm totally stoked about AI. Totally stoked.
And that's an area that can have a huge positive impact or negative impact in the world, for sure.
Yeah. I think AI could save society, actually. And, if any of you are listening and you haven't started using AI, I'm telling you that you are putting yourself at a significant disadvantage. You are hurting yourself. It would be like if we went back 20 years and you said, I'm not going to use personal computers. Personal computers are a threat to society. They're going to start nuclear wars. They're going to put thoughts in our head. They're going to enable people to, publish stuff that other people shouldn't read. Personal computers are dangerous. I'm going to stick with my manual typewriter. That's what you're saying. That's essentially what you're saying. I'm going to stick with my manual. In fact, maybe it's not even stick with my manual typewriter. It might be saying, I'm going to stick with ink on papyrus. Ink on papyrus. I'm not going to even use the printing press or computers.
And
that's what you're saying.
And pigeon carriers, of course.
Yeah, pigeon carriers. That's true. That's true.
So the book is
only as long as what I can wrap around the leg.
So the book is Think Remarkable and available now in the usual places. Guy, how about if people want to learn more about you and the work that you're doing, where should they go?
Well, honestly, my best work is my podcast. I guess I said that wrong because that implies my book is not my best work. But what I'm trying to say is that on any given day, if you really find out what I'm doing, it's my podcast, and that's Remarkable People. You just go to remarkablepeople.com. For the book, you can go to thinkremarkable.com. But the book and the podcast, they're soulmates. They're 2 sides of the coin.
Absolutely. We'll put the link to all of those in the show notes.
All right.
Guy, thank you very much for your generosity with your time and your knowledge. Hi there, Agile friends. Thank you for sticking around and listening to the details of the Product Owner Summit, this year's global summit dedicated to a critical Scrum role, the Product Owner role, of course. We'll have some amazing keynotes and 4 tracks filled with first-hand stories and experiences for product owners to learn more about that critical Scrum role. The summit will take place between April 23rd and 25th, so book your calendars. There will be loads of sessions for you to attend. One of the keynotes will be Dave West, the product owner and CEO at Scrum.org, one of the largest Scrum organizations in the world. If you want to know more, check out the details at bit.ly/product owner 2024. That's all one word, all lowercase, bit.ly/product owner 2024. We will also have 4 tracks. The 4 tracks will cover cross-functional product ownership. That's track 1. As Pixar's Ratatouille said, not every idea can be a great idea, but a great idea can come from anywhere. And this quote emphasizes the importance of a product owner being open to all ideas, regardless of the source, and also challenges us to focus on getting good ideas from everywhere and involving the whole team in the product owner role and responsibilities. The second track is designing products for growth, where we explore how to craft products ready for scalable growth, merging practical strategies with innovation. The idea here is to learn to design products for growth, whether it is sales or customer acquisition. The third track is Know Your Users, user-centric approaches for agile development. In this track, we learn to master user-centric techniques in agile development, to deeply understand customer needs and transform insights into meaningful UX designs that focus on engagement and satisfaction. This is a track ideal for innovation-focused agile teams. And the fourth track, one of the most exciting tracks in my opinion, is product development with AI, ideas for product owners. Not only do we discuss about using AI in the products, but also AI for product owners to learn to make a bigger impact with the help of the AI tools that we already have. The Product Owner Summit will also present to you great opportunities to network with your peers. So get your ticket and join our Slack. You can get the ticket and join the Slack at bit.ly/Product Owner 2024. As always, we have free tickets and also the paid tickets that help to support this podcast. So check them out at bit.ly/Product Owner 2024. That's all lowercase, all one word, Product Owner 2024. I'll see you in the summit floor.